season. Cahill! Everton have taken the lead! It was quickly worked and well taken by Tim Cahill.
Touched back and finished with aplomb by Tim Cahill.
Just lucky ball. Real chance! Goal for Everton!
Chance here. Oh yes!
Drives it across the header now by Cahill. And Everton have their goal.
She's crossing, not a bad one either. It's a goal for Everton. Tim Cahill scores for Everton.
Hello and welcome to Cahill's Corner Flag TV. I'm Jamie, back with you again this afternoon. As the boys are away on international break with their respective countries, I thought it would be an ideal opportunity to try something a little bit different. From going up to Goodison and when we're travelling to away games, we always get a discussion of who we believe should be in the Everton all-time Premier League 11. It's a subject of much discussion and it's hugely subjective depending on what era you were born, what you deem to be a successful Everton side, whether players that could get in the side are technically gifted than other players, players that had an impact initially, players that showed longevity in the team. But what I decided to do this week is I decided to put it out to you, the viewers, who you believe could and should be in Everton's all-time Premier League 11. So I put the vote out, and the rest of this video is basically we're going to be going through the team and prospective players that could or could not have been in the team. So I hope you like this video, so please stay tuned. As I mentioned, I've put this out to the viewers to pick the all-time Premier League 11. But one thing I have chosen is the formations. The formation this Everton team is going to be playing is 4-2-3-1. Starting with the most important position on the pitch, as far as I'm concerned, is the goalkeeper. I believe we've had three candidates that we could be considered to be our goalkeeper in this Everton all-time 11, Premier League all-time 11. Sorry. The first candidate is an obvious one if you ask me. When I first started watching football in the 90s, this man was our goalkeeper and he was part of the furniture, and that's Big Neville Southall. The icon, the record appearance holder, the most successful Everton player of all time. Obviously during the 90s he was coming to the latter end of his career, but he was still unbelievable shot stopper. Dodgy with the lob, just ask Carlton Palmer. But he was still a figure of mass importance within that Everton dressing room, and I know there's opportunities for this man to leave the club. He served Everton for 17 seasons and he'd seen the transition from the success of the 80s right through to the not so successful 90s, apart from the 95 FA Cup winning side. And if you can remember it, and some of us have got memories. I'm in my 30s now, but I can just about remember the 95 FA Cup final, and Big Neville's second half was absolutely different class. He made three brilliant save to keep it at 1-0. Dave Watson was given man of the match in that game, but as far as I'm concerned, Neville Southall should have walked with that, and he was just brilliant during those 90s. He ended up retiring in 98, well, he left the club in 98 and he pretty much retired. He didn't play much else. He went to Stoke, he had a spell, I think at Torquay for a bit, and then faded out the game unfortunately. But the first candidate is Neville Southall. Second candidate, someone who we looked to replace Big Neville with in 1996, and ended up not the only reason Big Joe Raw left the club, but because the chairman wouldn't support him, and that's Nigel Martin. Nigel Martin is keeper we wanted to sign in 96, but for whatever reason, with money, I know an Everton director had given him details to Leeds United and the address and how to get to Leeds United, and funny enough, a couple of days later, Nigel Martin signed for Leeds United from Crystal Palace for, I think it was something like £3 million. To think if he'd been our goalkeeper and he'd signed then, he would have been our goalkeeper for the best part of 10-15 years easily. A big Nigel, he eventually comes to the club in 2003, and he brought that air of stability that we'd been lacking for so many years. We'd had to endure goalkeepers like Paul Gerrard, Steve Simonson, and Richard Flappy Wright, and he just came and he slotted. I remember Richard Wright getting an injury, I think, against Newcastle in a league game, and he just came in, and I think he had a penalty to try and save. He didn't save the penalty, but he came in and the first thing he had to do was try and save it. Didn't save the penalty. But from that moment on, you just felt you had a calm assurance at the back line. And because the keepers that we'd had previously, you always feel when that ball went into the box, when Wright or Gerrard went up for it, you just a big gasp of, is he going to catch it? Is he not going to catch it? With Big Nigel, you just knew he was going to catch it. He was at the latter end of his career then, and we got 2.5 good seasons out of him. And yes, he played in poor side, but he also played in a really good side, and that side finished 4th in 2004-05. And between Weir, Yobo, Stubbs and himself, the back line was just brilliant that year, and we didn't concede many goals. We kept a lot of clean sheets, a lot of 1-0s to the Everton, and that was one of the main reasons we finished 4th, was because we were solid at the back and we didn't give many chances away. And Big Nigel Martin was a big part to play in that. So Big Nigel, for me, has got to be in there as well. And my third choice, and it might be a little bit off the cuff and some people might not agree with it, but that's Tim Howard. Tim Howard was our goalkeeper for 10 seasons at Everton, came in on loan initially from Man United. And he was a figure deemed at United. I have a few United fans, a few season ticket holders. Richard Jones, if you listen to this, big up to you. He thought Howard was atrocious. He blames Tim Howard for Jose Mourinho being where he is today, because Tim Howard dropped that shot, the free kick. I think it was I put the Porto midfield, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think Benny McCarthy slotted in the rebound and Tim Howard just dropped it and they got the away goal and they went through to the Champions League final. They won the Champions League, and as we know with Jose, the rest is history. So he came with not a great reputation, had a bit of a hit and miss spell at Man United. But we got this goalkeeper and we needed someone to replace Big Nigel, and he came in and he was athletic, he was a great shot stopper, okay in the air, couldn't kick for toffee, no pun intended, but his distribution has and was always atrocious. But he bought into the Everton way of doing things. I think Duncan was still there. Yeah, Duncan was still there at that time. Tim was there, Tim Cahill, and Alan Stubbs, etc. David Weir was still there, and they bought and they ingrained him what it was to be an Evertonian. And he was solid but unspectacular, but he was here for 10 seasons and he was part of the woodwork. He should have left after 2014 World Cup as far as I'm concerned. That was when his stock was at its highest. Unfortunately, he stayed a little bit longer, and thanks to Roberto Martinez, became a bit of a fans boo boy, and that was no fault of his own. He just his form had dropped off. He wasn't performing at the best of his abilities at that point, but it was Martinez keeping him inside that meant the Gladys Street were cheering him every time he caught the ball, and that was, he didn't deserve that. He was a good man and he's a good person, and he was a great Evertonian, and he served the club with aplomb. I think going back to the 2009 FA Cup semi-final where he made 2 penalty saves, he played brilliant in that game and he got us to the final eventually. We weren't great on the day, we didn't really turn up, as we rarely did in big games in David Moyes, unfortunately, but we got to the FA Cup final and his 2 penalty saves were brilliant from, I can't think off the top of my head, I think it was Rio Ferdinand and Dimitar Berbatov. That was it. He slotted it, he tried to pass it in and Howard just stood up and kicked it away. So the third candidate is Tim Howard. So we've got Neville Southall, Nigel Martin and Tim Howard as our 3 goalkeepers. And the vote goes to, with winning with 82% of the vote, is right. So we've got our goalkeeper sorted. Now onto the right back position. The 4 candidates we have for the right back position is Matt Jackson, Tony Hibbert, Phil Neville and Seamus Coleman. As I mentioned before, been brought up in the 90s, I remember Matt Jackson as being solid but unspectacular right back, but had an eye for goal, whether that being smashing the ball in front of the box at Bristol City in 95 or flicking on headers in the semi-final against Spurs to essentially put us in the ascendancy. He was he was part of that everyone plays to each other mentality that we had in 95, 96, and for that alone he deserves to be in the side. Next up, Tony Hibbert, someone who has been brought up, came through the ranks at Everton and had Everton in his blood like a lot of us. Your modern day fullback he wasn't. If he'd been born in say the 80s, I think he would have been fantastic. He was solid, defensively solid, positionally great, awesome in the tackle, loved the tackle. Just ask Cristiano Ronaldo. The amount of times that United used to fly into the tackle, into the family enclosure, and Ronaldo on the ball used to be in there as well, and he was fantastic at that. Going forward was not his game, but I can remember when we tore Leeds United apart and Steve Watson scored a hat-trick, he absolutely tore their left back apart. He put it past him, crossed it in, a big dunk made it, I think it was 2 or 3 at the time, and he was fantastic. And so he was a great servant, was there since 2003, right till when he wasn't renewed his contract at the end of last season. So for that loan he deserves to be in the side, so well done Tony. Third player is Phil Neville, sorry, my mind went black then, is Phil Neville. Phil Neville signed from Manchester United, and I think because of his United links a lot of Evertonians didn't really buy into him, but as far as I'm concerned he was a really good captain. He was a player who could play in numerous positions, but he's in the candidates for right back, because that 2007-8 season, or 2006-2007 season, him and Mikel Arteta built up such a good understanding on that right hand side, and the amount of goals we got from overlapping, underlapping, they were brilliant together, and they really built up a good rapport. A lot of people can remember his back pass against Wigan in the cup quarter-finals as probably his last act as an Everton player, but he was a brilliant ambassador for the club, and he really bought into the beliefs and the qualities of what it was to be an Everton player. And even with his United history, he would always talk about the club in high esteem. If you listen to him now, he's a media pundit, and you wouldn't think he played for us, but at the time he was a good captain. At a time where we needed some stability, and he slotted in, and he could, as I said, could play numerous positions. Him and Johnny Heitinga in the central midfield wasn't one that I would have chose personally, but at the time needs must, and we didn't have the amount of central midfielders that we currently do have at the club that could have done a so much better job. So well done Phil. Phil Neville's in. Last but not least is the Irish Cafu, Seamus Coleman. He's got to be in here. He is your modern day fullback, as Hibbert wasn't. You're never your modern day fullback. James Coleman is your modern day fullback. He can get forward, he can beat his man, he can cross the ball, he can undercut, he can shoot, he can assist. He's got it all in his locker. Defensively good, positionally sometimes can be questionable, and ball watching, he can be caught out a few times. But that when Martinez's first full season, his first season even, he was brilliant. The amount of goals and assists he got from right back was incredible. Obviously Martinez told him and Bainesy to push right up, get the ball in the box, and get on the end of the crosses that were coming in from the left or the right, and he did it with aplomb. And for that alone, Seamus Coleman has to be thought of as one of our best ever Premier League right backs. So the winner for the right backs, and it was an absolute landslide, and this winner is in the team, and thanks to the viewers, they voted with 75% of the vote, and the winner is so we've got a right back and our goalkeeper. So now on to the left back slot. A few candidates up for this left back slot. First one is Andy Townsend. Second one, some people will disagree, but Nuno Valente. And third is the one and only, the coolest man in football, Leighton Baines. So first up is Andy Townsend. We ain't got Andy Townsend. I promise you, Andy Townsend in his Everton team. Andy Hinchcliffe is possibly though. Andy Hinchcliffe, wonder of a left foot. I'll say this for a few players through this video, but I believe he was ahead of his time. Technically brilliant. If you ask anyone who remembers the 90s football, ask them what an Andy Hinchcliffe corner was all about. In fact, just Google it. Google Andy Hinchcliffe corners, because Andy just whipped them in with pace, with swerve. Used to put it in between the 6-yard box and the penalty spot, and all you had to do was attack the ball with pace and you got goals. And Big Duncan, Paul Rideout, Dave Watson, Dave Unsworth, the players who used to get in the box for us in those 90s will say that Andy's corners were brilliant. All they had to do was get their head on it and they would get goals from it, and he was just fantastic. He was part of the cup winning team in 1995, contributed along the way, and then the first full season of Joe Raw, where we finished 6th, he was fantastic. He could play left wing, played left back, left wing back, he was just fantastic, and he got forward, penalty taker, and for all of you that can remember those salmon pink shirts, he scored an absolute perler at QPR. I think we were 2 down. With something like 20 minutes to play. We won 3-2. The jigsaw man, Stuart Barlow, Ammo, and Andy Hinchley free kick right at the death won it for us. And I can remember that clear as day. And for that alone, he deserves to be in the team. So well done, Andy. Right, next up, controversial one perhaps, is Nuno Valente. Came in at the start of the 2005-2006 season. To say that the start of that season was atrocious, I think we lost 6 out of 7 in the league in our first 7 games. We were bottom of the league. We'd just gone out of the Champions League qualifiers to Villarreal. We'd just got absolutely hammered at Dynamo Bucharest. What a day that was. And we were desperate for a left back. We didn't really have anyone at that moment in time that could come and make that left back their own. We had Gary Naismith at the time, but Nuno Valente came in and he was so cultured. I just remember watching the Champions League when he won it under Jose, and he won the UEFA Cup the year before under Jose with Jose at Porto, and he was just cultured. Very not aesthetically pleasing as far as a footballer goes, but he was just cultured. I just love saying that word, cultured. He was just cultured. He got the ball, he would spray it forward. Defensively, not the greatest for a left back, but oh my God, could he put delivery in? I remember a couple of seasons after that, I think 2006-07 or 2007-08, him and Pienaar just built up a really good partnership. And I think he came on for Bainesy. Bainesy got injured against Sunderland. I think we were 1 up at the time, and Bainesy when he first joined the club he just got so many hamstring injuries, he couldn't settle in the side when he first signed, and Nuno came in and just slotted in and was brilliant in that season. Played in that UEFA Cup run, he came on the Sunderland game and we hammered Sunderland 7-1, absolutely destroyed them, played them off the park, some absolute worldies in that game. So if you want to Google Everton 7, Sunderland 1, I think it was November 2007. So yeah, 2007. So check it out. It was brilliant. He was fantastic in the game. He played a little reverse pass to Pienaar. Pienaar played it back and he cut it back across, and Cahill smashed it in top bin. We were like 3-0 up at half time. It was fantastic. So Nuno, you deserve to be in there. You were just a cultured footballer. And I remember in a League Cup game against Arsenal played their kids and we should have beaten them. We got absolutely done in the last minute. I think Adebayor tapped one in at the park end. But first half, he smashed in, I think Fabregas or Denilson, I want to say, at the halfway line. Went to block the ball and smashed him. And the ball went about 60 yards the other way and looped over the top of the keeper's head. Literally just dropped the wrong side of the crossbar. And what a goal that would be. For the older viewers, Jason Cundy, it was just like Jason Cundy back in the day. But yeah, so I remember that so fondly, and I remember Nuno Valente with such fondness, and it was a good footballer, a very, very good footballer, better than some of the footballers we have had graced with the Everton shirt down the years, so that alone he deserved to be in. Sorry, I've rambled on a little bit there. But the final candidate, we spoke about him previously, and has to be, obviously, the world's... I've not seen a cooler footballer than Leighton Baines. Everybody loves Leighton Baines. Goes on international duty and takes his guitar with him. He's just absolutely cool. I just love it. I wish I was mates with Leighton Baines. I'm sure we all wish we were mates with Leighton Baines, but he's an absolute top boy. So for that alone, he needs to be in this Everton side. Not just because he's cool, but he's been brilliant. He's been at the club. This is his 10th season, and there's a few players I'm going to go along the lines that have had testimonials or deserve to have testimonials, and this man, he's got to have a testimonial. Either at the end of this season or beginning of next, he needs a testimonial. He's just been, for me, the best left back in the Premier League since Ashley Cole deteriorated, moved on from Chelsea. I think he's just been brilliant. There's been not a left back that's touched him. He's consistent. He's had assists coming out of his ears till about 2012-13. I think he created the most goals in Europe from left back. It was just absolutely fantastic, and he was just such a brilliant player. Him and Steven Pienaar built up, I can only describe as one of the best partnerships you like to see in football. Nowadays there's less partnerships built up in football. It's obviously a team game still, but there's a lot of individuals. But him and Leighton Baines built up a brilliant partnership down the left. They just had such an understanding. If one would underlap, one would overlap. If one would overlap, one would underlap. They just were telepathic. They just knew where each other were going to come. And the amount of goals we got from that left wing position and that left hand channel was just unbelievable. Hate to imagine how many goals we got in that David Moyes era with those two. It was just amazing. Some of some of the free kicks he's taken down the years. Remember, we were 1-0 down in the cup against Chelsea, into injury time and extra time, and what to do? Bainesy steps up, slots it top in. The 2 free kicks against West Ham when we're losing, equalises first time, equalises second time. First time puts it to the left of the goalkeeper, can't get there. And this time he puts it across the goalkeeper to the right, can't get there. And he's just such a fantastic footballer. And I think this is going to be quite close, but I've got an idea who the left back position is, and with 84% of the vote goes to So we've got our goalkeeper, right back and left back sorted. We need our 2 centre halves now. So the candidates are Dave Watson, Dave Unsworth, Alan Stubbs and Phil Jagielka. So starting off with Dave Watson, an icon, another leader, Mr. Everton. Would always be when you wanted him. He would never be injured, would play through the pain barrier. I speak to a lot of people at Belfield, our old training ground, and they used to say he used to have so many injuries. He used to play with calf muscle problems, thigh problems, but he used to play through the pain barrier, and he would always be there. Led us to FA Cup glory in 1995 as an Everton fan in the 90s. This is my only bit of silverware, only bit of thing to get excited about as far as something we've won. Dave Watson was there and led us up, coming to the end of his career at that point, as was a few players in that team. But he stood up and was counted against a really good Manchester United team on the day. And he was a leader. He'd seen the glory days of the '87 Championship team, and he led us through into the transition in the 90s. And he stayed, once again, like Big Nev, had opportunities to move on. Sure, Dave Watson had opportunities as well, but he stuck around, got his testimony against Rangers in '97. And for many, numerous reasons, could win the ball, was great in the air, absolutely had a wand of a foot. I remember at Arsenal, again, we won down. Ian Wright traditionally scored against us in the 90s. Dave Watson had a swinger of a foot on the edge of the box. It flew into the top bin. We ended up getting a draw out of it. I think it was when Joe Rawle had just taken over, or in the new year after. And it was a brilliant goal. So Google that if you get the chance. It was great. As I said, he's an absolute leader, and he deserves to be in a position to be in the Everton all-time Premier League 11. Next up, David Unsworth, quite similar to Dave Watson, apart from David Unsworth came through the academy. Had a bit of a, I don't know, he lost his head and ended up going to West Ham for a season, but we won't hold that against him. He ended up coming back via Villa. Brilliant story if you ever heard of it. Had the opportunity to come back to Everton, didn't happen, so he moved from West Ham to Aston Villa. For whatever reason, Everton wanted to still sign him, and so he told his wife he wanted to move back up, and told the club he wanted to move back, and apparently the wife didn't like the Midlands, didn't realise how far away it was. Midlands is a great place, was brought up there, Swaff, but she didn't know how far away it was from Liverpool, and so he put a transfer request in, and within like a month he'd moved from 2 clubs. Ridiculous story. But Dave Unsworth, another proper Everton man, brought up through the academy. I don't know if he made his debut against Spurs, but we ended up losing, and my old man did his Achilles tendon. We lost 3-2. I think it was on Sky on a Sunday, and my old man did his Achilles playing tennis. And I remember Dave Unsworth scored in that game, and I remember this is a young Evertonian in the Everton team. I thought, this is brilliant, we want to see more of the young lads coming through. And Dave Unsworth came through and was solid, member of the 95 winning team, had a great season in 96. Would run through brick walls for the club. Technically not the most gifted, but had a hammer of a left peg. If you ever wanted someone to have a penalty, I know we talked about Leighton Baines being great at free kick. David Unsworth was quality from penalties. If you ever had a pen, you just knew Rhino was slotted. He would take the net off. Some of his penalties were that strong. Rhino just loved the big occasion. He loved the derbies. And he deserves to be a candidate in this all-time Everton 11, all-time Premier League 11. Sorry. Next candidate is Alan Stubbs, born and brought up an Evertonian, moved and started his career at Bolton Wanderers, and he came up in the Premier League. I think they had a season or 2 in the Prem, dropped down, and then when they dropped down he ended up going to Celtic, had a great career at Celtic, won the title on a few occasions. Obviously had numerous personal issues, and I'm going to in here because it's not important, but it shows what a warrior he is, absolute warrior. Real someone who I looked up to, not having any health issues myself, but someone who you could believe in, and you think, well, if they can get over that and then go on to be a Premier League football and be a Premier League football, give it up to get better again and go on to have the career he did, was fantastic. And so someone I've always really admired, Alan Stubbs, and came to an Everton team and played in some dire Everton teams. Let's not pander around it. When he first joined Walt Smith, we had some horrendous players at the back and in goal. He had to really try and marshal the ball out of Paul Gerrard's net, and let's just say that's just near enough impossible, if you ask me. But him and Abel Xavier, they had a decent enough partnership initially, but when they started playing Weir at the back there, we started to concede less goals, and they were solid and they worked so good as a pair. Stubbs would play on the left hand side of the centre half, Weir on the right, and they were just solid. They were unspectacular but solid. But he left and went to Sunderland for a little while, a bit dubious on contract issues in regards to the health scare that he had. And so they took this clause out of the contract, and so he ended up going up to Sunderland. And it's a shame, he kind of bittered it a little bit, but then he came back down and he left. I think he was at Sunderland for about 6 months before he came back again. And when he came back, we finished fourth. The second half of that season, he came in and slotted in with Yobo, and him and Yobo were brilliant. I remember we played United at home, Big Dunk scored the winner, and him and Yobo were just solid at the back. They were brilliant. And yeah, it was good. He's been a good servant for Everton down the years, and the only blot on his notebook, as far as I'm concerned, is when he suggested to Wayne Rooney that going to Man United would be a great idea after Wayne Rooney giving us 2 full seasons. So yeah, a lot of people hold that against Stubbsy, but he's a true blue. I remember meeting him in the Radisson once when we were staying up there. We got absolutely hammered by Bolton at the time, and yeah, he was injured, and it was great. Posted photographs, signed autographs. He was top man. So Alan Stubbs, yeah, you deserve to be in here as well. Last but not least is the one and only current club captain, Phil Jagielka. What's to say about Phil Jagielka? He wasn't born into being Evertonian like the others that we've spoken about. He's come in from Sheffield United. He came in 2007, I think, for £4 million, with a clause in his contract to say if Sheffield United went down. Thanks to West Ham cheating everyone, Sheffield United did go down. We ended up signing Jags for £4 million, which was ridiculous at the time. Came into the side, and David Moyes thought it'd be brilliant in central midfield. He wasn't. He was terrible. He had a touch like you know what. It was terrible. So he never really settled, and it wasn't until we got a few injuries that they ended up getting a place at the back, and he was brilliant. The season when we went on the UEFA Cup run, he was fantastic. He was solid. Him and Lescott started to build up such a great understanding at the back, and they were just great as a pair. They were fantastic. But Jag's never been a leader as far as a Roy Keane or a Dave Watson. He would shout or bark orders, but he would just let his football do the talking. And it's certain, in the last 5 years, when he's not been there, you can tell. And he's just such a solid defender and someone who throws body on the line. As I said, won't do much talking, but he leads by example. He's one of these that leads by example, and he's had a great Everton career. He's been here 10 years. He's had his 10th season, same with Leighton Baines, and I hope he gets a testimony that he deserves, because he's done really well for Everton. Well, I go back thinking one of my best Phil Jagielka memories is the 2009 FA Cup semi-final. He'd missed a penalty in the UEFA Cup last 16 against Fiorentina, and he stood up to take the 5th, and it could well have been the final penalty, and he absolutely just 5-foots it, slotted it past Ben Foster, and the rest is history. Pandemonium scenes in the West End stand at Wembley, and yeah, it was brilliant that day. Unfortunately, he did his cruise shirt a couple of weeks later against Man City, which meant he missed the FA Cup final, which he was absolutely devastated about. But yeah, so there are 4 candidates. So we need 2 players for this position. So winning with 48 and 37% of the vote, our 2 centre halves are